Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my April wrap-up, which was all over the place. So I managed to read 6 books, actually 5 books and a novella for the month of April, but I did start like 15 books, so I didn't finish 15 books. I only finished 6. So it was a struggle. It was a struggle to get books to keep my attention, as I'm sure everybody's going through now. These past couple of months, as far as reading goes, have been crazy. I think I found my reading mojo back in the middle of April, and by that time, I think I was in the middle of so many books that I just felt overwhelmed, and I was just like, whatever. But I did manage to get some reading in, so that is always a plus. Let's just jump into the books that I read for the month.
What we do here is go back.
I started off the month with Devil's Creek. I'm not going to get too into this book because I do have a Fright Friday that I did on this, which is just basically a whole vlog and a whole review on the book. And I will link that up in the cards so that you guys could take a look. But there is also a Nightworms blog post all on this book. We did do side-by-sides between Sadie, John, and me, so I will link that down below as well so that you can see other people's thoughts on this book. I ended up giving this one 5 stars. It was creepy, it was amazing, it was just this amazing storytelling, movie reel kind of a book. Again, not going to get too much into it, but just know that you need this book, and this book does come out next month, but I will leave all the information on the release date and everything and all the links I talked about down below, as well as I will include my Fright Friday video up in the cards so that you can check this book out. The next book was also a Nightworms book party. So, I mean, all the Nightworms is going on here in this video. And that was The Patience of a Dead Man by Michael Clark. This is a trilogy, if I'm not mistaken. The 3rd book hasn't come out yet. But the author was so kind to send us book 1 and book 2 in this amazing package. We had a mug in it. I think I spoke about this already on my channel in the in a book haul. But let's start off with this cover. It's just incredible. It invites you to read with all the flies on the woman and stuff. This book was just so eerie and so atmospheric. It was just so good. Here we are following our main character, Tim, and he's just having a rough go at life. He is getting divorced. He's losing a lot of money with his business, and he just has decisions to make. His life with his wife it was just horrible. He does have 2 little girls with his wife or ex-wife, and he needs to find a way to start making money again. He's about to lose his business. He has an employee. He like fixes up or like does construction work. He's a handyman. That's what his business is about. And so he decides that the best way for him to make his business pick back up is to get a project and just make some money off of that and go from there. So he decides to buy this house that is a little bit haunted, but of course he doesn't know this at the beginning of buying this house. And so the story develops from there. He forms a friendship with his realtor, and they just go on this insane wild ride with the person that's haunting his house. And so it is very eerie. There are parts that are very chilling. I really did like the characters. The only thing that stopped this book from being 5 stars to me, honestly, was that I felt a disconnect between Tim and Holly. It was almost like their chemistry was missing in a way, like they were just going along, and like their dialogue seemed a little bit dull between them, so I didn't feel that chemistry. If this book would have given me that with Tim and Holly, I think it would have been a 5-star read for me. This is a debut novel though, so it's very, I mean, it's a chunker. It's a very thick book, and it's very descriptive as far as like the house goes. And a complaint that some of my Nightworms peeps had was that this book was overly descriptive. Like, it didn't leave anything to the imagination. It even has like a whole mapping of the house and where everything is, and everything is described very, you know, like to the point. That part didn't bother me, only when it came to the dialogue between Tim and Holly. So just keep that in mind. But otherwise, even those cons with the story didn't take away from my enjoyment from it. You know, it's just that kind of book. So I highly recommend it if you want an eerie haunted house ghost story. This is a pretty good one. I am just not feeling it today. Next book I read, or let's say little novella I read, is The Pale White by Chad Lutzky. This was gifted to me by my bookstie Eleni, so thank you so much Eleni for this. I've been wanting to read this for a very long time. I've read a couple of Chad Lutzky novellas, and each one has left me with some kind of feeling. He is just such a phenomenal writer. He knows how to get deep into your heart and possibly make you cry. I'm not going to go too much into it because obviously it's a very short one. But here we start off the book with these 3 girls. There's a toddler and then 2 older girls, and they are being held in this attic, in this room, and all you know about them is that they're being used as sex slaves. And so it's just a story of them being in this room and planning their escape. So it's gripping, it's sad at times, it's full of hope, and it's just such a wonderful little novella. If you haven't read anything by Chad Lutzky before, please do so. He is just fantastic, and he has a way with words. Even in short little books like this, he can just grip your heart. I loved this one so much. I loved following the girls along this tragic event in their lives and just following them with a little bit of hope in their hearts and just trying to plan out how to get rid of this monster that's been keeping them enslaved for so long. I ended up giving this book 5 stars. Next up is Legendary by Stephanie Garber. Last month I read Caraval. I ended up giving that book 5 stars. So this month I buddy read this book with Tali. She ended up loving Caraval. She ended up loving this book. I think she gave it 5 stars. And I know that a lot of people say that this book 2 was so much better than book 1, but I had a hard time with it. Now, I loved the story. I think that this story had a lot more depth than the first book. We have the scenery and the scenes are so much more, they're richer, they are amazing, to be completely honest. And while in the first book we followed Scarlett, in this book we follow Donatella, which is the other sister. So if you guys don't know, it's a group of sisters. One of them has been dying to go to Caraval for a really long time, and she kept writing to the master because you can only go to this Caraval, this traveling circus. It really isn't a traveling circus, but that's the only way that you can basically... I am having trouble with words. I am having a really hard time with words. I wasn't going to film this today, but I'm sort of like pushing myself to do something because I'm not feeling well mentally. But anyways, the traveling circus is basically what everybody calls it, but it's just a place where there are games, and these games have consequences. They're like decision games, not like carnival games, but it's like decision-making games, and they can affect your life, and they have consequences if you make the wrong choice, but there could only be one winner. And to go to this traveling circus or traveling carnival, you have to be invited. You can't just show up. You have to have an invitation. And so these 2 girls, the sister, Scarlett, has been dying to go, and she keeps writing and writing and writing and writing until finally they both get invited to this Caraval. And so we follow Scarlett in book 1, but in book 2 we follow Tella, which is the sister, the other sister, and she's going through the games now. So in book 1 we follow Scarlett going through the games, and now we follow Tella. And while I think that her time in Caraval has the most storyline, I feel like I enjoyed Scarlet's more. I don't know why. I think I had to start this book like 5 times, to be completely honest with you, because I kept getting lost. I kept having a hard time understanding it. Now granted, I don't think that that's the book's fault. It's just the place where I'm at mentally right now, having a hard time reading. There came a point where I finally was able to grasp the story, and I just kept going from there. I did listen to this on audio, so I know that that had something to do with it. I also listened to Caraval on audio, and I didn't have that much of a hard time, but again, times were different. But I had a hard time, and that unfortunately bled into my experience. I ended up giving this one 3 stars, but I will say that I want to give this book another try, because this could possibly be a 5-star book in a different state of mind. So I do want to reread this later on, you know, I don't know, maybe next year or at some point. I do want to give it a reread because, like I said, I feel like there is more of a storyline to follow here. The colors, the atmosphere, the scenes are much richer in my opinion. And honestly, I feel like Scarlet is a little bit of a calmer person compared to Tella. I feel like Tella is so much full of life and just so spunkier than Scarlet. So I feel like I missed out on that part. So again, I do want to give this another try because I feel like I just missed a lot in my reading experience. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars. Next book that I read was actually an impromptu buddy read that just sprang itself up, and I just jumped on it, and that is for The White Stalker by Liv Constantine. This is my second book by Liv Constantine. They're actually sisters, and this is their pen name, but this is the second book I read from them. The first book I ended up loving, which was The Last Time I Saw You, and Harper Books sent this my way. This book actually releases May 7th, so it's not released yet, but my friend Eleni and Tish actually received a review copy as well, so we just decided to get together and read it, and it was just a grand old time. This is told in dual perspectives. We're following Piper, and she is new in town. You know that she is running from something in her past. We find out that her ex-husband actually died along with her stepdaughter, so his kid, they actually die, and she's just running away from that event for some reason. And so she comes to this town. She opens up her like wellness center where they do yoga and meditation. It's all about the mind, and she just seems like she has her shit together. She's just running from something, you know that much. She's hiding something. And then we also follow Joanna, and she has her life together. She has her 2 kids, a boy and a girl. She's married to the successful lawyer, but you know that there's some type of something that happens with her husband. Her husband went through this depression. He's trying to get back on his feet. She's trying to push him on, egg him on, trying to be the good wife, looking after the kids and the house, giving him the space that he needs. And he's working on this new case, and somehow his and Piper's lives intertwine, and the book goes from there. This was just so good. It was fast-paced. There was times there where you're just like, okay, you know, you're almost like losing your focus on it, and then bam, something happens and you're like, what? That's twists and turns. What it says here says, all she wants is the perfect family, yours. No ma'am, you cannot have my family. I ended up giving this beautifully fast-paced thriller 3.5 stars. For me, it's hard to like rate thrillers. I feel like giving that book 3.5 stars, many of you are gonna be like, well, you just raved about that book. Yeah, I think that 3.5 stars is an amazing rating, but to me, I feel like thrillers are just, they're almost all the same. Like if you've read one thriller, you've read them all, and I know that's really not the case, but that's just how I feel about it. So to me, a 3.5 star rating on a thriller is like almost like a 5 star. I don't know, it's hard for me to explain. Next book up was actually also a Nightworms book party, and that was for The Devil's City. I did get an ebook of this, so I will put this up here, and this is just a little novella that I had so much fun reading. Here we are following Mr. Holmes and his castle of deadly things. And so this all takes place in Chicago, obviously in the White City, during the fair time. You know, they're building the fair, they're starting this fair, and in the background we have H.H. Holmes just killing people. And so it dives into the castle. It was actually the murder castle. It was called the murder castle, but it was actually a hotel that he used almost as a cover-up, as a deviant to what was really happening in the dungeons, which was actually that he was killing people in torturous ways. Like, it was a torture chamber down there. And so the hotel was just used as a cover-up for what was really going on. But the actual layout and the architecture of this hotel, of the murder castle, was just so interesting to me. How it was all like weirdly laid out, and there was like hiding spots and things like that. So that was a part that really fascinated me. And then obviously the torture parts. This is very descriptive as far as the actual murder scenes go, but it almost leaves you wanting more because this is a novella. I would not have been mad if this book would have been much longer and much more detailed. I need something like that. I know there's many other books with H.H. Holmes as the main character. I think there's fiction, and then there's also non-fiction, and I want to read all of them. I have a huge list of books that I want that deal with H.H. Holmes. I will say that I did find myself a little bit lost in the first half of the book, and I found that one of my other friends, Cami from Cami's Corner, she also had a hard time trying to piece it together. But after halfway through with the book, you kind of sort of follow the story easier. It's just like, it's a lot at the beginning. For it to be a novella, it's a lot of explanation, and it jumped from person to person without closing their stories, if that makes sense. But I ended up giving this book 4 stars. This was actually part of a Kickstarter, which I think was met already, where he is releasing an RPG game as well to go along with this little novel. It was just so good. I highly recommend it. The last and final book that I read for the month is The Deranged by Meyers. I actually finally read this. I was saying in my, I don't know, did I do a TBR? I don't think I did a TBR video this month, but, or did I? Yeah, I did. I was saying on my TBR video how I've had this book literally for over 6 months. I'm even more than that, because she had actually sent me the ebook when I lived in Texas, and I never got around to it. And then when I had moved here to Georgia, she had actually contacted me. She's like, do you want a physical copy? And she sent it to me, and I felt so bad that it had been so long, but it almost got like lost in my piles, and I completely forgot about it until I was like rearranging stuff, and I seen it and I felt so bad. But I finally read it. I still haven't reviewed this on Goodreads. I need to sit down and write down my review, but this was such a fun book. It follows 2 teenagers. Max, he is almost done with school. You know that he's trying to take, like, I believe it's his final, or writing his final paper for his final grade, and he's just thinking about graduation. He's focused. He wants to get this done with. He's almost done with school. And we also follow Skylar, and Skylar is his next door neighbor. They've known each other their whole entire lives. They grew up together, and he lives with his dad and she lives with her uncle. One day shit hits the fan, and the dad gets him, his neighbor, and the daughter, and they just leave town. They're on the run because there is this virus that has spread, and it turns people into the deranged. They just get violent. They have flu-like symptoms, but with violence and erratic behavior. And so they're running for their life. His dad knows more than what he knows. Like, he doesn't know that his dad knows what's going on, but basically he's like trained, gun training, and he's shooting people and he's stealing things, and he's just like, what is going on? And they're trying to make it to their cabin. They're trying to get away from all of this because people are just going crazy and killing each other, and the dad is just trying to make it to the cabin, trying to keep them safe. And there's a whole bunch of action and adventure, and I loved it. My only gripe with this book is this is a YA, if I'm not mistaken. This is a YA book, and it reads like a YA book. I feel like this book, I say that because in this book, even the adults sound like teenagers. So that's why I say that it reads very YA. It's not a super bad thing, don't get me wrong. It's enjoyable. That doesn't take away from the enjoyment. But sometimes I found myself like rolling my eyes when the dad was talking, and I felt like there wasn't a change in the dialogue when it came to the dad. Like, the dad sounded like one of them. Like, the things that he was saying was just like, Okay, he's a dad. He, you know, that's the only thing. I mean, it's something minor, but the book is very enjoyable. There's fast paced. There's some scenes in here where you're just like, yeah. You're really into it. It's almost like action. So I really did enjoy it. I'm actually going to buy the second book because I believe this is going to be a trilogy, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm very interested to see what else happens because this ends on like a what? Like you want to know what happens with them. So I do plan on buying the second book and checking out where Max ends up or what happens to this crew of people because you're left wondering. So that's it, you guys. Those are all the books that I read for the month of April. If I would have to pick a favorite, man, I don't know. I think it would have to go to Devil's Creek. I found that one to just really grip me, and it was just a storytelling, and it is perfect for summer. I do say that in my vlog, that it's just the perfect summer horror read. So if you're looking for a good summer horror, I would highly recommend Devil's Creek. That had to be my favorite for the month, but there was just so many good ones. And you know, we all love reading, so it's really hard for me to pick a favorite each time. Let me know down below what was your favorite book for the month of April, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!